Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome to episode 40 of the OT is In podcast. Since it is December, many of us are looking for a bit of a break in our school year, also while recognizing that natural learning is occurring all the time. So today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Cynthia Heren, a key figure within the Homeschool OT community. Now, her journey began when she discovered her family's neurodivergence through her son's occupational therapy sessions, which led to a broader understanding of autism, dysgraphia, and ADHD within her household and within her own knowledge base. So in today's episode, we're going to explore how Cynthia has used OT strategies to create a customized and supportive learning environment for her children. We'll discuss the practical tips for managing handwriting, sensory processing, and executive functioning challenges, especially during the bustling holiday season. From using fun tools like Legos and kid-sized chalkboards to engaging in holiday crafts and baking, Cynthia's insights are not to be missed. So join us as we uncover the importance of building a knowledgeable support team, integrating children's interests into learning activities, and fostering their development through creative and adaptable methods. Get ready to be inspired by her story and learn how to make homeschooling both effective and enjoyable for neurodivergent children. And don't miss her resources at InsideOurNormal.com. Happy holidays from the OT is In podcast. This holiday season, we want to send warm wishes to all of our listeners. So whether you're cozying up with hot cocoa or wrapping up another busy homeschool day, we're grateful to be here and be a part of your journey. I also want to remind you of all the natural learning that occurs each and every day for your children. I recognize this time of year, many are busy with activities that vary from your typical rhythm and routine. And I also recognize this variance can be stressful for your children and for some of you that worry and stress about doing enough for your child's academics. So the reverse planning guide from homeschoolot.com is the perfect tool for those of you that need a reminder that you are doing enough. Most likely more than enough. This guide is designed to help you recognize the motor skills, the social skills, the cognitive skills, and their tie to academics that you are already naturally doing. There's a worksheet that allows you to jot notes, while a video teaches you to break down and analyze the activities, simplifying your homeschooling journey. So, though it can be useful all year round, it's especially useful right now during the holiday season. So don't just plan, celebrate the learning that's happening already every day. Thank you guys for being a part of our community, and here we are wishing you a joyful holiday season and a bright start to the new year. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. My name is Sarah Collins, and today I have Cynthia Heren, who has such a special spot in my heart. For those of you who have never seen her face, if you're here on YouTube, Cynthia is the behind the scenes of Homeschool OT and has just poured so much into this podcast, into what Homeschool OT is in itself. But she also has such a fantastic homeschool journey of her own. So she's my guest and my mentor all at the same time, all put together today, which is beautiful. So Cynthia, can you tell us a little bit about first who you are, and besides my right-hand gal, who are you?
Yes. I feel honored to be called your mentor because actually OT was a huge part of our homeschool journey. It is how we found out that we were a neurodivergent family and that a one of those little skill assessments at the early pediatrician appointments, I think my son was about 3, there were some concerns about fine motor delay. So my mama heart said, I don't want to wait. I want to look into this. And that led us to meeting an OT and those evaluations, which were for fine motor delays. We said, it's okay. He's 2. It's okay. He's not feeding himself with a spoon. Like he'll get there, except he was almost 3 at this point. Not still just 2, but almost 3. So he should have those skills. And so that kind of led us down that path. And those fine motor delays led us to sensory processing, which I had no idea what that meant until I met her. But then I was like, oh, now I know all the things and know what this all means. And then all of that eventually led us to an autism diagnosis for that child. And as now we have other families with those diagnoses and others. And we also have he has some dysgraphia as well. So OT holds a special place in my heart. I write about our neurodivergent homeschool at insideournormal.com because our normal is different than normal and typical, but it works for us, and to us, it's all we know. So it's great.
Yeah.
And we love it. And a big part was finding community and finding people. And so my goal is to be a place where others can realize that their normal is okay, that it's not typical, and to just find those similar people. So, and then, yes, I started looking to want to help others with their websites as well, and met Sarah. And it was so exciting to work with Sarah because OT had changed our family. And so I get to work with Sarah both with knowing all the tech and everything, but also has been a family who gleans and learns from all that she does and knowing the values she brings to the homeschool community, which is so wonderful.
We are, I think we're lucky to have each other. We'll just go with that.
Yes.
It's really great. So today what we're going to focus on a lot, actually, because it is December and we are all kind of feeling this somewhat calm, quiet, but also busy, crazy season all at the same time, and trying to think about how are we still catering to our children's needs, also still thinking about some academics, but being allowed to have some rest in there. And today we're going to focus on that throughout handwriting. Throughout the rest of this month, we're going to also talk about sensory processing during the holidays, executive functioning during the holidays. But right now, today, especially because that is something that, Cynthia, I've worked through so much with your own family, this is where we're going to guide our thoughts today. So let's talk a little bit first about what has your journey been through dysgraphia, and how have you celebrated still during December, or were you really still focused on your everyday?
So we did a lot of OT, and all of that story was when my middle child was 3. Currently, I have 11, 14, and almost 16. And so that he is now 14. And so handwriting and what that looks like, what it needs to look like, what it does look like, and how we accommodate that isn't so different than when we were trying to pick up a pencil at the beginning, which until something that your kids don't naturally take to, it's something you don't realize how much is around them. We also have some ADHD. So going to restaurants and being handed crayons to occupy them, and your kid doesn't want to pick up the crayons, but also doesn't want to sit still, is a challenge.
Right.
And then you don't know that your kid has sensory issues, and it's loud and it's different, and there's waiting, and there's all the things.
And those are all hard. So, all of those things that you just mentioned are all hard.
Yeah. So our early handwriting, we were really got an amazing OT, and she was really awesome at teaching me as much as she was directly supporting my child. And
let's just stop there for a second, because boom. And that's really, when you are looking for people to build your team, it is important to recognize that you as the parent are the leader of that team. And so that education is key for homeschool parents, for all parents.
Yeah, and it really taught me and helped me start to even begin to think like an OT and see and understand how the things that we were doing every day at home could hit some of those OT goal kinds of activities. And so that was a big deal to us, and I think really formed what our early homeschool years looked like.
So initially, unpack that a little bit for me. What were some of those things that it could inform and you could use in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. So she did teach us how to use handwriting without tears and really broke down. I could read the instructions on how to use the letters or the was it draw, wipe, try sequence with the sponge
Yes,
and the chalk
absolutely.
and all that. But then actually watching her do it with my child was such a better teacher for me to then feel more confident to do it at home with my kid. And at that point, he was, by official dates and stuff, he was a year behind. So when he was kindergarten age, we were doing the pre-K workbook. But there were a lot of tears, no matter what
Handwriting
we
without
tried to
tears
do.
did not have no tears.
No, it didn't. And so through some other advice, I just gave up and I was like, let's hit it in some other ways. Let's try some pincher stuff. We did some rice bin, different kinds of things, just a lot of different things. But I did at one point buy a small, one of those kid-sized chalkboards. And that ended up being the secret.
Like you did it as chalkboard on the wall or a chalkboard on his lap?
It was one of those little easels. So he was
Okay, love
standing
it.
up in front, was in our school space or whatever. And so one day he drew an octopus, and by octopus, a circle with the little lines coming out in all directions.
Great.
And he's a really bright kid, and autistic kids, neurodivergent kids, they just think differently, right? They just think differently. And I knew he was bright. I knew he knew his letters, but translating that to the tracing and the building blocks. So I tried to sneak it in. And so I said, let's label your picture. So he labeled his picture. And so I spelled it for him and he wrote the letters because he did know how to write the letters, even though we hadn't formally gone through the books. So that's how we wrote for 6 months. We did the Usborne step-by-step drawing books, and I would show him the pictures, give him the directions. So we're also building these direction following skills. And then I would sneak it in and say, let's label it. So I have dozens of pictures, and everyone makes me smile and almost cry of joy because he wrote.
Yes.
And there were no tears. There was the octopus and the bats and the cats and just all kinds of things. And he would do it. So we did that for about 6 months. And then we pulled back out that preschool level writing book, and he flew right through it.
Yes. So what you did there is you followed his lead. You were like, I can see something that he's doing. And especially, I also want to point out that was a vertical surface. And so then you've got the core engaged, and that does also change what you're seeing, your eye-hand coordination, because you're at a different level. You're looking right in front of you rather than your head down looking at your desk or however you have it laid out for writing. And so then as you're doing that, and following his lead. And then I love the way you said, let me sneak it in and see what he can do. And he's just like, all right, cool. Because did you know before you started writing, did you know that he knew how to do the letters, or was that just something you discovered?
My kids also read really early.
Okay.
So he was definitely starting to read at that time. So like he could identify letters and he knew what they were and he'd seen them on the paper. I wasn't even really looking to know how he would form them, and they're mostly legible, but like we could deal with that later. He wanted to do something. So
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the motor skills that required, right? Because you were talking about for sure that then he knew some of what that motor planning was and whether or not he knew the quote unquote correct way to form them or not, he was forming them that you could see. How did that transfer over? Because you mentioned some about the spoon, and because I know your kiddo, I know he also loves Legos. Like, how else were you working on some fine motor stuff during that time?
So again, we got really creative with the Legos. And again, like another piece here was he would get frustrated easily.
Okay.
So at the time, we actually lived in Florida, and we had one of their scholarships for special needs kids. It has a different name than what it did when we were a part of it now. So I won't try and guess what that name is because it's changed a little bit. But those recesses are wonderful. And it lets us think out of the box, and it lets us really stretch and do outside the box things that really hit those goals and those skills for our kids in a way that really connects with our kids and helps hit their strengths. So in this case, when he was kindergarten, first grade, we were buying the giant Star Wars model size Lego kits. So he built the X-Wing, and we never quite got the big giant Millennium Falcon, but he built a lot of the walkers and the different fighters and different things. And he would put those together. the little pieces and following and the preciseness and all of that was again hitting a lot of those OT goals. And it was doing the thing that he wanted to do. He wanted to build with Legos. He still to this day enjoys Star Wars. We still to this day have 4 folding tables covered with Lego setups that cannot be taken apart. And there are the Angry Birds and the Minecraft and the Star Wars. And my daughter has a whole table with her city and friend sets. It's still a thing at our house. This was what he did, and he felt successful, and he picked out the sets, and it helped him do the things that he wanted to do. And I knew he was building these skills that he needed to practice along the way without it feeling like work.
Yes, absolutely. So this episode is brought to you by CTC Math, the program that we have used for years in our homeschool. Now, I love this program all year round, but especially during the holiday season where our rhythm and routine are more flexible. CTC Math is a flexible online math curriculum that adapts to your family's unique schedule, whether you need to adjust for a busy week, accommodate for different learning paces, or just want the freedom to work around life's surprises. So CTC Math not only provides structured lessons, but also offers built-in evaluations, giving you as a parent a clear, real-time view of how your child is progressing. With these insights, you can support your child exactly where they need it most, helping them master each topic before moving on. And I love that I can check out a PDF of what will be covered in each lesson, so I can chat with my kids about the real application of math during our holiday activities. So for example, since I just checked in on the PDF of the math that my 8th grader is doing, we had a conversation about rational versus irrational numbers, and then applied those same labels, definitions, to rational versus irrational song lyrics for the holiday music that we have playing around the clock. So random, yet effective, because though we decided I'm not the best math teacher for them, and I balance my time differently than sitting next to them for all of their lessons, I do want to support their learning in our everyday activities. And CTC Math makes that possible for me. So you should try CTC Math today and experience the freedom and clarity that it begins and brings to your homeschool. So as you're mentioning and you're thinking about all these underlying skills, so I do want to refer people back to, there was an entire episode all on these underlying skills, but some of the things that you've mentioned here are the vision, because for you to be able, especially following Lego sets, that is not only visual scanning of finding the exact piece that you need, but it's also the visual perceptual skills of knowing what comes first, second, and third based on that little book where it's 2-dimensional, and then you have to transfer that into a 3-dimensional activity. There is the pincer grasp that you need, a lot of times the putting together, so it's using 2 hands together, then sometimes having to pull them apart. Although my son this morning, I was laughing at him because he brought over his drawer of all the Lego pieces of the grippers to take them all apart. He's like, I have 32. Why would you ever need 32?
I think you might have more than us. I'm not sure we have a full 32. I think we might have a dozen somewhere, but
they come with the majority of the sets, but I'm like, wow, why do we have 32 of them? But those do help to pull the Legos back apart again. You also, the attention, which you were mentioning before, even when you're going into a restaurant, the sensory processing of I'm taking in the touch of these, I'm taking in the smells of whatever room that I'm in where I'm building, the sounds of my sister's coming in and telling me she doesn't want me to touch her Lego friends, all of that. Persistence is executive functioning as well. But then just thinking about before you can do those fine motor skills, which is where I think a lot of people struggle, is you really have to have enough core strength and shoulder strength to then move out to your hands. So in the OT world, we call that you need to have this proximal stability before your distal mobility. So when you've carried this all over beautifully, whether you meant to or not at that time, but the writing on the vertical surface helped you to have that core strength. I'm sure wherever you were having him sit to build, you're either supporting the core strength so that he could do it, or if he's sitting or crawling or laying on prone or has the freedom to move between those, you're also helping him to provide or to build that core strength as well. So your OT brain was working.
And another tool that we use that was definitely more of a core thing is we have a yoga ball. And
Beautiful.
it goes, how much it's used varies as he's gone through different developmental
Hmm.
stages. But one of the coolest things is he bounces around the house on it. So he
Yes.
paddles it behind him with one hand and catches the bounce. And at one point, he would say that like he felt weaker because he does have some level of hypotonia even today. And there was a time in there where he actually would set the table while bouncing on this ball. So he would actually like a wheelchair-ish
Yeah, I'm
kind
like
of
trying to
thing, but
picture
not.
it, but
But
yeah.
also to our brains, we're like, but isn't that all more work? But it worked for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today at 14, he was actually out on our disc swing with the kind of spider web seat, and he
Yes.
actually
Hmm.
stands on the side of it and swings for a lot of input. So he does that. In fact, talking about different brains wired different ways, we were talking about his math, and he
Hmm.
still needs a lot of extra space to write. At 14, we still keep primary ruled paper available next to the wide ruled because that's what he's most comfortable writing in,
Hmm.
which was interesting in the handwriting focus group to learn about the different kinds of dysgraphia, to realize where he fit
It's
and pinpoint that there was more distinguishing characteristics about how that worked. But he was telling me it with his math. He's, Mom, it should be like your boss. They should give you the tools that you need to accomplish the work. So your math book should give you enough space to answer it right on the same page to solve the problem. And
hmm.
that's why I liked math. Why he liked math. There were other reasons he didn't like it, and we're using something else right now. We're using CTC math, which has worked well for all my kids who have variety of learning challenges and thinking different. But I was like, dude, this is one example where your brain you think about this so differently because
Yeah.
you're totally right.
Yeah.
You're totally right. But also, sorry, that's not the way the world works.
But
And you
also it
need to
costs a lot to
recopy it.
print, to print with
Yeah.
that much space.
Like,
That's
you have
probably
a
why.
point, kid. You have a
Hmm.
really big point because writing's an issue and he needs a lot
Yeah.
of space and he can't write where there's typical space, and math books don't tend to give you a lot of space. So,
And so we've talked about handwriting without tears and the handwriting without tears board. So there's a chalkboard there that has two straight lines, and we can put a
mhm.
link to that in the show notes. And for my son, we turned that vertically and used those lines to help us to keep things straight when he was trying to do addition with more than one number, try to keep those columns straight, and division, like long division, to try to keep those columns straight, the same type of thing. We've also used graph paper if you can do it with smaller numbers. But the back, speaking of Christmas, the back of wrapping paper, when they usually
That's
have those grid
true.
lines for kids
Yeah.
that need that bigger space, you can do it on the back. It's just like big, giant wrapping paper. And you know what? It's fun to do that and then wrap presents in it and give your grandma
Ooh.
math homework. She would be really happy to know that you're working on addition, or you might be really happy to rip it open and rip through your math. So
This
I
is
have a
true.
picture of my son that we'll make
Totally.
sure we link here too, of using that years and years ago. It was a great tool for him. So Cynthia, tell us a little bit more about some options of ways that throughout the holidays that you guys were working on these skills throughout your day.
So during the holiday, one of the things we're talking about strengthening and strengthening those hands. So I always try to pull the kids into holiday baking. So I have
Yes.
them do a little bit of that stirring to use that muscles and that hand grip. We've also recently had a few different broken arms and broken hands and wrists. So my daughter and I both broke them. Hers is actually right before the holidays, and mine was about 6 months later. So again, very aware ourselves how much strength and stuff. So to be able
Right.
to get the kids involved in those stirring and even the
Rolling
preciseness
pin.
of measuring and leveling the scoops and different things, to just have those. I have to be in the right frame of mind so that I have patience for the
Yes.
spills and the extra mess. But it creates the memories, it gets them involved in making the cookies or maybe trying a new flavor and different things. One of
And
the
we
things,
should link from
oh
in
yeah,
the
the
show
baking
notes here
workshop.
too. Yes, there's a baking workshop that goes and breaks
Mhm.
everything down that you're talking about, the grip strength, the coordination of using two hands when you're doing even the rotation of wrist to dump something, the transporting of goods.
Mhm.
Like guys, this baking is not just wow, today we made cookies, but it is for sure building all of those skills that you need for handwriting, but also for higher level cognitive skills, executive functioning, and the
Mhm.
sensory processing as well. So you're doing all of that with baking.
And then it's really a great time to do little crafts. We have the kids' Christmas ornament boxes. We have one for each of our kids of all their handmade stuff. So, and we've done so many. Initially, we did a lot with the OT that we had when he was younger. And so she would bring a lot of the peel and stick foam or other kinds of things. So me not being particular about the perfect of it and trusting that it's a process craft, not a finished product craft. And it's been fun in our community. We have a group that provides a Christmas party for families with disability. And so sometimes we get a lot of new ideas from them and what they do. One of them actually, they've had a couple years, it's always a hit with our kids, is they do a like shish kebab pole, and then you put 3 donut holes on it to make a snowman, and then you use icing and things to then decorate it or tie a licorice onto the pole. And then you also have this snack on a stick.
So cute.
Those don't usually even make it home because my kids eat them immediately. But it's really fun to walk around and see what activities. We're actually in a university town, and so this is done by a disability sorority or fraternity, and so they themselves have various challenges, and so they pick new and different activities every year, different kinds of crafts and everything. And so our kids love it because they feel successful going and doing the activities, and it's just a place where they're really welcome, and they have games they can play that are adaptable, and then there's various craft stations, and then they do actually raise money all year and actually buy the kids Santa presents, which my kids have always loved. So they get like a real true Santa present.
That's awesome. Even in graduate school, when I was going for my OT degree, we had to do an activity analysis. So we had to make a gift or make something and then talk about all of the motor skills, the cognitive skills, the social skills as doing it. And so when I was literally 26 years old and I gave my mom a mouse Christmas ornament because I was a broke graduate student, I'm like, this is what I made at school. My ornaments can last for forever.
They do. And they've made some that I've then printed the pictures to put their pictures from that year in.
Oh, that's cute.
Or different things. And then they love it every year. So a lot of them, they've done pre-made, pre-glued like popsicle sticks to a triangle, and then had the kids glue and stick sequins or beads on them. And so based on different abilities and such, kind of what size items you glue on that frame, and then you can do different things. I think one was a sticky clear paper and having different colored tissue paper, and they had the frame cut out that was, I think it was a bell, and then put it between the, what's that called? The book covering plastic.
Yeah, like I know what you're talking about.
Sometimes we've then bought the suction cups and put those up in our front window to have the stained glass with the tissue paper. And it's not messy because you're just putting it on the sticky back contact paper.
There it is, contact paper, yes.
So that's a no mess, because I was definitely, because of the attention span, because of the ability level, I hated doing science experiments when they were little. I also did not do the crafts and art class by doing actual art or actual science, because it took so much more effort to get it all out for them to actually stick with it and do it and not end in tears. And my kids are just fine.
Yes.
Now that
I'm sure that is so relieving.
My high schooler is taking a class at our co-op. It is taught by a master's in chemistry and a PhD in chemistry, and she is doing just fine. And we have a PhD in engineering teaching the life science for my other kid, for the 14-year-old. And again, fine. They will be fine if you skip the messy things. Lots of PBS kids.
Yeah, here's my freedom on sensory bins too. They are fantastic to help with fine motor skills for if you've got kiddos who are throwers, and you're going to end up, I've said this story many a times in other podcasts, but with lintels all over, all the way into the back of your cabinets. It's okay. You do not need to have the sensory bin. Go outside and that's also okay. Or make the ornament where you have to pick up something small, and that's also okay. Now, last thing here, we also have some very direct ways that you can work on handwriting around the time that leads into the holiday season. So what are some ideas where you actually were working on literal handwriting?
So after we got through the whiteboard and after we got through handwriting without tears and had his letters, then we ran into a problem that the next level of books, the handwriting line shrunk. And his handwriting has still not really shrunk. to be what we might call age appropriate for a 14-year-old, or typical for a 14-year-old. That being said, the co-op class I teach with 15-year-olds, there's some pretty bad handwriting in there.
Yeah.
So we had a couple kids be like, so can you rewrite that more clearly, please, this week? So that being said, so we had to come up with something else. So I do designing things. I make Sarah's handouts look pretty. And so I started using his favorite thing, Star Wars again, and we made handwriting pages. And I followed the handwriting without tears of a line of text and a blank line to write, and a line of text and a blank line to write. And so I made a variety of packs using quotes from his favorite Star Wars movies, episodes, I think 7 and 8, and Rogue One. That was the stuff that was happening at the time, because he didn't want lines. He was also older and intellectually advanced. And so he didn't want to copy In a Galaxy Far Away. That was too simple. So he needed the big fancy full English vocabulary words, all of the above. So on my site, Insider Normal, I have these kits available. So I've made handwriting pack or Minecraft and Star Wars, as well as some other different subject specific packs. There's some art and some simple machines and some healthy eating ones that kind of go with a couple lap books, because we've done some lap books too, because there's so many fine motor things that are hidden in that as well. And at one point he was like, so Mom, when am I getting my next one? I thought I was done, and I didn't even know he was still using them, but he liked them and he felt successful, and it was something that he was interested in. So there's a brand new pack that's Christmas themed. So I'm doing the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas that kids can copy in that to make some festive, and really as they copy it, and learn it. So my kids actually help write the Minecraft pack, because while I am aware of all the things, I do not know it at the level they do. And so I said, okay, you need to give me trivia. You need to give me facts. And so they help me write those kits so that other kids can write about what they love in a way that makes them feel successful and practice those skills, because we practice the handwriting, the act of writing, apart from the activities that need the learning. So he does not write for book reports. We skip handwriting rough drafts of papers. He goes straight to the computer. Because we don't need that to hold up the other skill that is understanding the content of the information.
Absolutely. And until those skills really come together, which for some kids they don't. However, to be like for my son, what we turned to focus on was sketchnoting and note taking, because that's when he does need to be in the moment, able to copy and take down things to help him to remember as time goes on. But for the majority, we are separated those tasks until that we could merge for some, and that's a different time frame for different kids. So to be able to have some copy work to separate that out as they get older, and that isn't, like you said, isn't childish. That's a fantastic resource. So Cynthia, one more time, tell everybody where they can find those resources.
They are at InsideOurNormal.com on the internet.
Love it.
There's also a Teacher Pay Teacher store too. So if you have extra credits there or whatever, you can find the resources there under the same name as well.
And we will make sure that they're also linked in the show notes. By the we, I mean Cynthia. That's so much of what she does, which is so great. So thank you so much for being here, for people to hear the voice of the behind the scenes of Homeschool OT too. It's so great.
Yeah.
And happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Christmas.